Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to another episode of the OBX Wave Report, where we discuss all things waves, weather, climate, and beach lifestyle here on this January the 7th. And for today, we're going to ramp our reporting down a bit. We were pretty frenetic in the January 6th Friday for future episodes, and we are going to move back to a little bit more of a moderate pace for this weekend. I need a break. But we will probably be doing two episodes this morning and maybe another one at the beaches, although conditions for the Outer Banks right now are pretty non-dramatic. They are, I guess, in some ways, thankfully calm and just beautiful and placid, although cool, with light to moderate winds coming in out of the northwest. You can see the geo image of the satellite picture for the United States right now. And focusing in on the Outer Banks, we've got some high level clouds streaming above with actually a few lower level clouds mixed in right now. It's relatively cloudy in my location at Manio, and based on the weather observations at various reporting stations across the Outer Banks, weather conditions are also partly cloudy to cloudy as well, although these clouds are expected to somewhat clear off with partly cloudy conditions dominating throughout the rest of the day. As I said before, the swell conditions for the Outer Banks are pretty calm. We've got 0 to 2 foot conditions across the Outer Banks, and we've hit a lull in the waves, but wave conditions are expected to improve slowly as we head on through next week. And then by the end of next week, we might get a storm system off the coast that pumps the waves up a bit more into the 2 to 6 foot range ish. We'll see, but the longer range wave models are pointing toward some larger swells coming in the Thursday to Friday time period. Out west, the US West Coast is continuing to see a progression of storms and high surf, strong winds, particularly for the northern and central beaches of California. The southern beaches are experiencing milder conditions, and Southern California has been somewhat spared the continuous influx of storms, although the rest of California has received quite a lot of precipitation and continues to be predicted to see a series of storms coming in. Although some of the longer range models now are showing a shift in the storm track more toward the north. So in the longer term period, the storm track may start to focus more on Oregon and Washington. Of course, these are longer range models, and as always, they should be taken with a grain of salt. I am going to talk a little bit about Ireland and the UK today as well. There is a strong storm moving into that region right now with significant wave heights in the near offshore environment for Ireland in the range of 25 to 30 feet. For some coastal features, that might pump that surf up even more. We might even see near 40 to 50 foot waves or higher in the near offshore environment. As far as the coast, it generally depends on how deep the channel is running into the coast as to whether or not the coastline can support extraordinarily large waves. But nonetheless, likely right there on the beaches, they're experiencing some pretty heavy surf there in Ireland right now, and that condition is expected to extend throughout today and running into early tomorrow, so Saturday and Sunday timeframe. And it is worth noting that now a series of storms is predicted for the North Atlantic to rush into the Ireland and UK region. So I'm going to do a supplemental wave report on that after this wave report. All right, so that's a quick roundup for today. Looking at the satellite picture for the US, the infrared satellite shot provided by Tropical Tidbits. Go ahead and check out Tropical Tidbits and follow Levi Cohen over on Twitter to get some great information about the tropics. Right now, I guess that it's not tropical interest time period. I'm using the wonderful maps provided by Tropical Tidbits, courtesy of Levi here to talk about just general conditions, general wave conditions. Of course, the time period for the tropics really heating up is in the starts to heat up in the spring and summer and then runs in through fall. So that's when Levi is typically most busy, although we might see a tropical cyclone out in the western Pacific somewhere during this time of year, or like, I mean, just very oddly, we have even seen tropical cyclones in the North Atlantic at this time of year, but it is very, very rare. But in any case, we do see the clouds overhead here in the Outer Banks. We do see the major storm system continuing to impact California and the US West Coast as well, with a succession of storms. I don't know. I might pull up a National Weather Service radar map for you guys to show you some of the features. I wasn't considering doing a special feature on California today, but I might pull up a National Weather Service radar map as a little bit of a supplement as part of this OBX wave report. Nonetheless, our friends out there on the West Coast are experiencing higher surf as well due to the succession of storms rolling in. But I think the main wave spot in the northern hemisphere in our region of focus right now is going to be focusing in on Ireland, and we're going to definitely do a special report for that today. And looking at, um, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to do a thing. So we're gonna, I guess what I'll do is I'll use the Earth null skull map. Typically, I use Google Maps for informational purposes to get the coastal, like a coastal frame of reference for you guys as I do the local wave reports. But for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and use the Earth null skull map. It's not as detailed, but you should get the picture. But looking at the wave models for right now off the Outer Banks, it is noticeably very calm with wave conditions in the range of about 2 to 3 feet in the near coastal environment, and that's actually even smaller in the near coastal environment for the south facing beaches. And that's translating to 0 to 2 foot surf for most of the Outer Banks as we get into the waves hitting the shores. It's worth noting that the swells are now coming in from basically two directions. We got a swell coming in from the northeast, and we've got a swell coming in from the south. And the south-facing beaches are getting better surf generally, but overall, it's just pretty flat out there, or pretty becalmed. I guess in some locations it's not flat. We've got 1 to 2 foot waves, and those are certainly rideable, but overall, the conditions are much milder, much calmer, much more placid for the Outer Banks today. And focusing in on our three locations, we're going to look at Jeanette's Pier, which is right up here east of Manio. And conditions at Jeanette's Pier right now are 1 foot, so very small. We were out there yesterday evening for a brief episode, and maybe waves were in the range of 1 foot. It looked really small, although we did have some breaking waves right there on the shore. So maybe about 1 foot waves. The primary swell is coming in at 5 seconds, and the secondary swell is coming in at 7 seconds. With those 1 foot waves, I don't really think it's rideable. I don't know. Someone might be able to eke something out of that surf, maybe with a bodyboard or something, or I don't know. It was mostly shore break, so I don't really think you could even use a longboard out there. The winds are coming out of the northwest at Jeanette's Pier at 10 miles per hour, which is offshore, and pretty gentle. Air temperatures are 48 degrees Fahrenheit at Jeanette's Pier, so a bit cooler than yesterday. Ocean water temperatures, though, are somewhat warmer at 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Weather conditions are partly cloudy, and the expected high temperature for today for the air temperatures are 49 degrees Fahrenheit. So cool to cold air temperatures, cold water conditions. If you do get out there today, anywhere in the Outer Banks, you're probably going to want a 3-4 millimeter wetsuit, with the exception of the far south facing beaches where you might want a 2-3 to a yeah, 2-3 millimeter wetsuit. But with those air temperatures, you're probably going to want your hood on to keep your head warm and your gloves and booties. So just make sure that you take care of your cold weather protection if you do get out there in the water today. Now, moving on south to Esterns, which is out here on Pea Island near the Pea Island National Wildlife Refuge. The wave conditions are a little bit better at 1 to 2 foot, so there might be some rideable surf out there just south of Oregon Inlet, where my little green dot is here. And so those 1 to 2 foot waves are coming in at a 7 second period for the primary swell. And winds are out in northwest at 14 miles per hour, which is offshore. So maybe holding up those waves a little bit more with that gentle offshore flow. Air temperatures are in the range of 51 degrees Fahrenheit with ocean water temperatures at 57 degrees. So even just down the coast here, water temperature is about 2 degrees warmer. You're still going to probably want your 3-4 millimeter wetsuit and all the other gear to keep you warm, keep you nice and cozy, unless you're a polar bear. In which case, polar bear out, but don't risk hypothermia, please. In any case, weather conditions are partly cloudy, and the expected high temperature today is in the lower 50s. So pretty cool conditions remaining there at the Key Island region there at Esterns. Now we're going to go all the way down south to Billy Mitchell, and right now Billy Mitchell is the big wave spot for the Outer Banks today. Those big waves being a solid 2 feet. In all honesty, it's probably more in the range of about 1.9 with the wave monitors rounding up to 2 feet. But nonetheless, 2 foot-ish waves down there at Billy Mitchell, coming in at 7 seconds for the primary swell and 6 seconds for the secondary swell. We got winds out of the northwest at 10 miles per hour, which is a offshore wind as well. Air temperatures at Billy Mitchell a little bit cooler than up here at Esterns at Pea Island, so 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Ocean water temperatures considerably warmer at 63 degrees Fahrenheit, but still pretty cool. So you're still going to want to have your cold water protection, again, unless you're like some kind of crazy polar bear. Weather conditions are partly cloudy with an expected high temperature today at 51 degrees for air temperatures. So overall, temperatures in the Outer Banks in the upper 40s to lower 50s today. Water temperatures ranging from the middle to upper 50s to the lower 60s, and swell conditions ranging from 0 feet to 2 feet, maxing out with a big wave spot at Billy Mitchell Airport. And that concludes our local observations for today for the OBX wave report. And now I'm going to go ahead and show you a global forecast system model for North America, the Eastern Pacific, and the Western and Central North Atlantic. And right now we have another low pressure system lashing the US West Coast with severe conditions, heavy rains, winds, and high surf. For the rest of the United States, conditions are pretty mild, and thankfully, warmer than normal conditions likely for the central U.S. as high pressure systems tend to dominate, particularly for the south central regions. Cooler conditions here across the U.S. East Coast as a front has slipped through, but here in the Outer Banks near average conditions. We do have a strong storm that's right north of Ireland. You can kind of catch the edge of that here in the upper portion of the tropical tidbits map. And we will focus in on that system in the Earth Null School model here as we get to the end. Excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and run this model and let you guys see what the expected conditions are. So by Monday, we get a brief impulse for the Outer Banks, a coastal low in the range of 10-15 millibars. Not a very strong storm system, but likely to kick up waves a little bit for the Outer Banks, although I don't notice tightly packed isobars or anything like that. So wind conditions are probably not going to be that strong. It just might stir up the water a little bit because things have been a bit calm here. But this storm does rapidly head offshore. It's also worth noting that we continue to see storms lurk off the US West Coast and then sweep in as we run the models. And I do want to point out that now we're starting to get a consistent pattern of storms of strong storms. And I know storms have been pretty consistent running into Ireland and the UK, but now we're looking at consistent, pretty strong storms back to back to back for the UK and Ireland. So something to keep note of. I'm going to talk about this in a supplemental for the OBX wave report. But again, we've got another storm moving into the west coast as this coastal low for the east coast moves on off into the North Atlantic, strengthens off the northeast coast, and then joins a chain of storms heading over toward the UK and Ireland. And we have a somewhat weaker storm system lashing the west coast by Tuesday as high pressure moves into the Outer Banks region. So we get this impulse running into the west coast, a very powerful 954 millibar storm forming south of the Aleutians, and the storm starting to really, yeah, to intensify here south of Greenland, dropping into the 960 millibar range before heading into the UK and Ireland. We got another storm system forming here off the US East Coast. So it's not really directly interacting with the Outer Banks. I don't believe that's, well, a little bit of an interaction, almost a kind of Alberta Clipper type storm dropping down through the northeast and then heading offshore and gaining some steam from those warmer than normal ocean waters. As for the US West Coast, we got another 960, 970 millibar system encroaching for the US West Coast. And you can see these storms really intensify as they head on south of Newfoundland into the North Atlantic and then moving in toward Ireland and the UK. This other storm, again, bombing out south of Greenland in the range of 961 millibars. This one heading off more to the north and skirting the coast of Greenland. 957 millibars right there next to Greenland. That's pretty intense. This is later in the model by January 16. So we get a progression of storms heading toward the UK and Ireland, and then the storm track appears to shift northward in the models, more toward the east of Greenland region. We want to watch this. It stalls out. It's predicted to stall out in the January 15th timeframe. And by the time we get this far into the models, we can take pretty much everything with a grain of salt. But it is interesting to watch this thing bounce around between Greenland and Ireland before tracking off to the east. Interesting storm system there. Something to watch, something to keep an eye on. We also have a powerful storm running into the Pacific Northwest. This one, so as the models continue into mid January, it does look like the storm track has a tendency to aim more toward Oregon and Washington and less toward California, although Northern California still takes a bite from these storms. But if the storm track does shift like it is predicted, we would tend to see some respite, particularly for Southern and Central California, as the focus of the storms tends to track off more toward the Pacific Northwest. So just notice how this stream of moisture is aiming more toward Oregon than it is for Central California. So moving about 200 to 300 miles up the coast here in the model runs. And so then the impulse moves even a little bit more to the north, focusing in on Seattle and then like British Columbia area. If this happens, then California will finally get a respite as high pressure starts to build in toward mid to late January. So we'll keep an eye on that. And then rolling these models back, and I know I'm doing a lot of talk about different regions, but I did want to focus in on some of the stormier regions for you guys. For the US East Coast, stormy conditions, it's kind of like mildly above average stormy conditions predicted, but nothing too intense. With another impulse moving off the US East Coast in the mid to late January timeframe, with more storms tending to form in the models, but nothing really crazy or insane to speak of. But Greenland does appear to get swarmed by storms here. And you know what? I am going to flip over to another view here. We're going to look at I want to look at the Northern Hemisphere map as, can we do, Hmm. I don't know that we can do oh, can we? No, not available. Okay, I do want to do precipitation and moisture for one of these regions. So let's look at the North Atlantic. Can we get closer to I want to get closer to the polar region. Hmm, they're not helping me. Maybe Europe. Nope. Mm, hold on. Nope, nope, not helping me. Um, all right, so let's just go ahead and do this without the precipitation, and I want to just talk about how these storms are focusing in on Greenland in the longer range for these models. Let's go up to January, I think it was 20. So here we have a 950, looks like a 958 millibar system between Greenland and Iceland. Look at this influx of warmer air running in between Iceland and Scandinavia. When you get these strong storms here, like hovering around Iceland, and particularly if you get like this long string of lows running in through this region, you can get a lot of warm influx into the Arctic. And this is just something that recently, from a climate standpoint, um, I've just wanted to monitor because you can get these flash warming events for the Arctic, which does provide kind of a climate fingerprint of ongoing conditions, kind of like a high watermark for warm or extreme warm events for the Arctic during wintertime. And when I say extreme warm events, it's anything above freezing or close to freezing. It's extremely warm for the Arctic Ocean at this time of year. So, but I'm going to go ahead and advance this, and we'll see what these storms do as far as warm air is concerned. This is way out in the mid to late January timeframe. So we got a powerful storm here east of Greenland, and that counterclockwise circulation is dredging up all this warm air and throwing it up over Svalbard, and a tongue of um, warmer air moving in over the Arctic. And we don't have a direct translation for what this would mean for surface conditions, and also this is very far out in the models, but it's just something to keep an eye on. And the tongue of warm air does extend. Wow, look at that. Okay, so you've got some strong lows here and strong east of Greenland, strong high pressure system to the south and coming in over Scandinavia here. And the clockwise feature of the high pressures dredging up warm air, and the counterclockwise progression of the low pressure systems here are just pulling up this tongue of much warmer than normal air into the Arctic at the tail end of this model. And it just boop. Yeah, you know, see how there's that bubble? Um, and so then you end up with period, maybe a 1 to 2 day period of much warmer than normal conditions over here up in the high Arctic over the ocean region. And that has impacts on sea ice and can translate into or can have um, connections between what's going on in the upper atmosphere. So something to watch. I don't know if the climatologists will pick up on this and the weather experts will pick up on this, but this is a very interesting feature and one with climate fingerprints on it in the late portion of this global forecast system model. Of course, this is at the 500 millibar height, so we're looking a bit higher up in the atmosphere, but it does, they often telegraph down to the ground, and yeah, this is something. This is something to keep an eye on, and we will keep an eye on it. If there's any really extreme weather event in the Arctic, it does affect us here on the Outer Banks, particularly if it's part of a larger trend of Arctic warming. Has impacts on everything from extreme weather to sea level rise for the Outer Banks and the Arctic. So yeah, something to watch in the long term here as we get that series of lows that are predicted to form around Greenland. Of course, this is long range weather model, not very we probably can't say that it's very clearly resolved at this time, but it looks like there's a possibility of a big Arctic warm up in the mid to late January timeframe in these models. All right. So last of all, I know we've gone pretty far afield, but we do here at the OBX Wave Report, particularly when things are calm here. You know, and in the climate system, there's a lot of stuff going on. So I did want to talk very briefly about this storm, and then the series of storms that's expected to come into Ireland and the UK. I'm going to focus in on that a little bit more in a supplemental episode. But right now, we've got wave conditions in the nearshore environment off Ireland in the range of 25 to 30 feet, maybe a little bit more in the near offshore environment. So, like, yeah, it looks like 25, 24, 27, and heading off a little bit further offshore, you got 30-foot significant wave heights. And then those waves are expected to build a bit more throughout the day, although it doesn't look like they're reaching like as close to 30-foot or even 35-foot significant wave heights as we had in some of the predictions. So very large waves off of Ireland in the 25 to 30-foot range presently, and building through the next we'll say 2 to 8 hours as a very strong bomb cyclone impacts the UK and Ireland right now. All right, so that sums up our OBX wave report for today as we look at both the Outer Banks and regions in the lower 48, the Eastern Pacific, and the North Atlantic. And I guess in this case, we also kind of went a little bit far afield to look at the Arctic as well. But overall, for the Outer Banks, the waves right now are 0 to 2 feet. Weather conditions are calm, and we don't have any extreme weather conditions in the near future, which is a good thing. So let's hope it stays that way, although the waves are expected to build, which is also a good thing. So we'll have some more wave reports and reports on more surfable conditions over the next few days. So thank you for joining me again, and please do everything you can to help us transition to clean energy rapidly and to slow down and then halt and then reverse the harms to our coastlines coming from the climate crisis in the form of sea level rise and more extreme weather events, and also to roll back the harms, these harms and all the related harms that are coming from the ongoing fossil fuel burning, which is the primary driver of the climate crisis. So thank you for joining me.